burglary. They concluded that it was a justifiable homicide and an act of an armed robbery, case closed. Everything went back to normal. But it never went back to normal. Announces one day, up to the San Fernando Valley to see my police buddy Ernie. I'd never been to the San Fernando Valley. Sounded like an exciting adventure. What country there was. All piled in the Plymouth and headed. I remember getting on the freeway in those days, stopped at Van Nuys, and we had in the cab of a moving truck with my dad on the way to our new home in Granada Hills. And I was scared. I was excited, but I was scared. I wasn't scared about leaving South Central. That was a scary place for me. I'd seen 2 homicides by the time I was 7, and there was always I was kind of missing a couple friends, but not much. But I would miss my extended family who lived all over the South Central, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles, my grandmother, my grandfather. But we were going to this new place, Granada Hills. So as soon as we got off the freeway, I started counting swimming pools again. And by the time we got to our new house, I was up to 75. So there we were in front of our brand new house, glistening in the middle of this dirt lot. And I looked up and down the block and there were similar houses on a brand new house, dirt lot. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And we got out of the car and walked in. I walked up to the house and opened the door, and that smell of a brand new house. And if you could take the smell of a new car and multiply it by 100,000 times, that's what that smell was, that fresh paint and that parquet floor that had never been stepped on. We were the first people ever going to be, we were the first people to ever live in this house. And it was like we were in dreamland. And so we walked in and looked around, and it was 4 bedrooms where we had been living in this tiny, tiny duplex in South Central. And it was 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, and a huge lot. I would learn all my basic gardening skills in that lot. And that night, we went to sleep. We only had 2 pieces of furniture in the whole house, 2 beds. The one I slept in and the one my parents slept in. I went to sleep, and in the middle of the night, I woke up, I heard a sound. It's happening again. I looked out the window. We didn't have any shades on the windows at this time. We had just moved in. I looked out the window and could see nothing. But it sounded like our house was getting electrocuted. Opened the window, and the sound got louder. And I opened the window the whole way, and it was really loud now. And it took me a minute to figure out what exactly that sound was. It was crickets. A million crickets. A million crickets had replaced screaming sirens, which I heard 10 times a day in South Central. And the next day, my dad had to get up and go to work, and all the way in downtown LA. He took the only car we were there at the house. My poor mother would just wander around trying to find some shady spot and sit there and pant like a German shepherd, you know. She was gonna deliver any day. So I would walk her around. I got up and I would walk, she would waddle. And we would go into every room and just kind of sit there in the room and feel the ambiance of the room. There was no furniture. We sit on the floor. Even at that age, it was hard to pick her up after we had to get out of there. We go into, I picked out my room. Okay, that's great. Look, it's a parquet floor. It's just like at the Boston Gardens. This is amazing. And then we picked out the room that my twin sisters, Margie and Monica, would occupy. And we would look out the window of every room, and then we would go and sit in the living room and look out those windows and imagine a big lawn in front and gardens in back. And we didn't have a swimming pool. And we would never have a swimming pool. And it was okay. I didn't really care. It was just a status symbol. Besides, I didn't even know how to swim at that point. So summer went on and it was always hot. It was just 100 degrees every day. And my grandmother came out to help with the care of the twins, and they were born, Margie and Monica. And we were having a great time settling into our new house. I remember the first day my mother walked in the kitchen and turned on the taps and mud came out. That's how new that house was, man. So summer was over and I was ready to start my new school, Granada Hills Elementary. So my grandmother had come and she was watching over my twin sisters, and my mother walked me through the orange grove till we arrived at Granada Hills Elementary. And we got up to the playground. There was kids yelling and screaming. It looked just like South Central, only everybody was a little more polite, but it was loud. And we walked in and found my classroom. Teacher was very nice. She greeted me, showed me to a desk. And I was trying to be on my best behavior, you know, and I was actually trying not to wrinkle my clothes. And I walked like a starched robot. And I sat down. I don't even remember what she said. She was just going on about this is here, this is there, and these are the rules and blah, blah, blah. The recess bell rang. All the kids headed out the door. So I got out there and looked around at the playground. And I noticed that everybody was white. Everybody, not all white. There was a few Mexicans, but no Asians, and certainly no blacks. I said, well, this is weird, but okay. I mean, one day everybody in my neighborhood was black, and then the next day everybody was white. It was like going from Nigeria to Knott's Berry Farm, you know? What is going on here? So I looked around for something familiar, something I could relate to, and in the distance I saw a tetherball, and kids were playing tetherball. Hey, they had tetherball in my old school. I'll go try that. I walked over and sat down on the bench to be the next one to play. And they were playing tetherball just like they played tetherball in South Central. Okay, I know these rules. And then in the near distance, I saw these two kids walking towards me, and they were laughing to each other, and they were pointing at me. And then they would laugh again, and then point again. And finally, they got up to the bench where I was sitting, and the bigger of the one shoved me right off the bench. And he said, hey, get to the end, Blackie. I didn't know the procedure here in Granada Hills. I only knew what I knew from South Central. So I swung as hard as I could and hit this guy right in the mouth. And I guess that was the first time his sense of entitlement ever got challenged. Because he lit up like a thermometer, and he didn't stop crying for a half hour. And this teacher, nearby teacher, heard little Johnny crying. He came, got the both of us and marched us off to the principal's office. And on the way there, I thought of the beating that I was absolutely going to get from my father for misbehaving, but it paled in the comparison to the thought of at least one little echo was never going to bother me again. Nice first day. So I was thinking, South Central was undeniably a violent place. Sirens every day. But the violence was general. It was all around. It was happening to other people. This is the first time it was personal. This is the first time I'd ever been in a fight. I didn't fight with my friends. They were my friends. And so I wondered, I was the same kid in the situation. So what was different about that world and the new world? What was that dividing line? What was that boundary that separated those two worlds? And I came to the conclusion that it was a line of 75 swimming pools. Thank you.
That was Cheech Marine. In addition to his fame and notoriety as half of Cheech and Chong, he's directed Broadway shows, been honored by the Smithsonian, written children's books, and a memoir called Cheech Is Not My Real Name, But Don't Call Me Chong. Cheech is of Mexican descent and holds one of the most significant private collections of Chicano art in the world. I caught up with Cheech recently on an internet call. Obviously, you're a comedian, you're also a memoirist. How does telling a story at the Moth differ from the other ways you talk about your life?
More frightening, really, because these are, untested things. And the first reaction you get is when you put it in front of an audience. So you don't know how's it going to go, or, you don't know where the spots are, and you just go and do it. So it's tightrope walking. For me, I'm used to, rehearsal and know exactly what I'm doing. There was a lot of improv in it, but this was frightening, and it was this particular one was a subject that was, very fragile to my psyche.
Because of the traumatic events that you went through as a kid?
Yeah, exactly. And the neighborhood, and then my father was a policeman in the middle of it all. It was, it was, when you're growing up as a kid, that everything seems normal, because that's all you know. Gunshots in the middle and 3 o'clock in the morning is normal, and every kid in that neighborhood knew what that was. You getting shot or hit, or it's like, oh, that's normal. That happens every day. Well, it doesn't happen every day in most neighborhoods, but it did in mine.
Mm-hmm. Until you got to the swimming pool neighborhood.
Into the swimming pool, guys. That line, what for me, what it brought back was a lot of, those memories sitting in the back of the car, in the back seat of the car, when I'm all alone.
I like in your stories the way you talk about childhood. It seems like it's really vivid for you. You bring it back really easily, like you transport yourself and us there.
Yeah, I was coming into consciousness, basically. I'm just passing the age of reason, and starting to figure a few things out. And then when you had something to contrast it with, South Central to Granada Hills is as much contrast as you could get. Like, okay, how do I fit in here? How do I do this? So those memories are very, very vivid.
Are you going to tell any more Moth stories, you think?
I don't know. That was very scary for me. It really is a high wire deal. You tilting over here, and you got to tilt back. But you're listening to the audience for reaction for the very first time, and it's like, ooh.
But a Moth story, audience reactions. As a comedian, what you said is true. If they don't laugh, it's not funny. But with a Moth, you might just change their rate of breathing, or you might.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. When they're quiet, that's much more fearful because you never heard it before. And in that silence, there is great depth and great meaning.
It's mentioned that you have like the largest collection of Chicano art or something like it. Can you tell me a little about that?
Yeah, I don't, I don't claim to have the largest. There's other large collections out there. I just claim to have the best. You can argue with that, but show me your museum.
Cheech Marine. His recently opened museum in Riverside, California is the Cheech Marine Center for Chicano Art and Culture.
Oh, cool.
He says
see it.
It will probably be referred to as the Cheech.
The Cheech. I want to see that. That sounds awesome. Okay. Well, we listened to the story. It was good.
About crossing the boundary between the human and the animal kingdoms when this hour about culture shock continues.
I don't think we're going to stick around for that. I think I'm going in, but thanks.